Yeah, so I was working with an agent just a few days ago, and super interesting story. And you've heard similar stories like this before. The thought of doing more business is essentially out of the question for this person, and the reason is they don't want to work more hours. Have you had anyone mention that before? Like, I don't want to sell more real estate because then I'm going to have to work more.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the most common things I hear with agents that are, when we're talking about growing or scaling their businesses, they don't want to work more.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, okay, cool. So and so sells X amount of homes, so they must work 500 hours a week, right? So the question is simple. The question is like, if you could sell more homes without working any more hours, would you do it?
Well,
What do
I
you?
think anybody would say yes to that.
It's an IQ test.
Real estate titan that is pushing the limits on the status quo.
And it took years and years of failing to get where I am today.
You're like, whoa, where you actually get the most clarity.
That was kind of one of those pivotal moments when I started building a business.
I spent a lot of time becoming an expert salesperson.
Yeah, she passed. She passed. She said yes. I said, okay, well then let's talk about just a scenario. Like, do you show homes right now? And she said yes. And I said, okay. So if you never showed another home again, would that give you time back?
She said yes, I'm sure.
Yeah. She's like, yeah. And what she said, yeah, but so
Okay.
this is where you start. The original issue is I don't want to sell more homes because I don't want to work more hours. And then we say, okay, well, here's a scenario where you don't have to work more hours. Yeah, I would get my time back, but I like to show homes.
Got it.
So this is where it's like, okay, well, now we're getting somewhere. So is the case that you like to show homes? Is that more important than you hitting your goals?
And having the time for your family or whatever the other
Yeah.
reason for the time is, right?
Goal is sell X amount of homes. Goal is, be present with my family and be home nights and weekends. And then like we flush out this extra goal that's show every home. Like, is that a goal? That I don't see that in your goals except for you're holding on to it. So what's interesting is what we're talking about, Brent, here is limiting beliefs. And when we start to, you broke it down to me earlier today. How did you break that down to me? You basically said goal plus time. Like what was the scenario you were saying?
Yeah, basically, you can use goal and time as a thought exercise tool, meaning you can take and, we've all been a part of coaching programs in the past, probably where they're like, what's your goal? Cross it off and double it. So no context behind that, right? But what the reality is if you were to, you're talking to this agent, you're like, all right, so let's say I'm going to make up numbers now. Let's say her goal was 15 units and, but currently let's say her goal is 20, but currently she's doing 10, but she doesn't know how she's going to get to 20 because she doesn't want to work more hours. Okay. So here's the thought exercise is if my goal is 20 and then I can't work any more hours, what needs to change in my life and in my business in order for that to happen? And I think the thought exercise, what ends up happening is it starts to uncover things that you're doing that actually aren't moving the needle or that actually aren't getting you closer to the finish line that you're holding on to. And I mean, I think maybe you'd call them limiting beliefs. I also call them like blind spots in your business where you think, if her goal was to go from 10 to 12, then it's very easy to be like, not a lot needs to change. I can just keep the status quo and I'll just, get a little bit better at converting or whatever. But when you really increase that goal and you limit the time and you have a tight time frame to accomplish it, it really uncovers issues inside of your business.
So what's interesting? I love that. Like blind spot, limiting belief. The limiting belief was I can't sell more homes because I'll work more hours.
Correct.
And then that only came out because it's like, well, are you happy with the numbers you're hitting? And maybe real estate's not for me, blah blah blah. But it's like we have these goals that we push for. And just a side note, because I want leaders and coaches to make sure they understand this. You cannot coach someone who doesn't have a gap. Meaning, you just said if they're doing 10, they want to go to 12, there's a gap. It's 2, right? There's a gap there. I would want to push them a little bit further because it's going to help them really make big moves in their lives. So I'd try and say, like, why 2 more? Why not 10 more or 50 more or no more? Like, why 2? I'd want to push into that. And the reason is we got to create a gap. We got to have a big enough gap that allows them to see that they have to make change in order to hit it. Because if the goal is to sell 1 home a month and I'm selling 1 home a month, what do I need you for? What do I need this leader or coach or mentor for?
Well, okay, I'm thinking through the lens of the audience right now, and they're saying, well, you're just getting me to increase my goal so you're useful as a coach.
Sure.
Okay. So to anybody listening that just had that thought, here's what I want you to think about. If you don't want to make more money, you're selfish, period. If you don't want to make more money, you are selfish. So let those words sink in for a second. And I think everybody's knee jerk is like,
They're all
what?
fighting you like bullshit. I'm a saint.
Okay. Here's what I mean by that is none of us are making the amount of money that, I mean, there are people in the world, right? But like most of us that are in this business, like you don't want to go back to a 9-to-5 job because that limits your income, correct? Correct. So you're in this so you can have no lid on what you can make. That's number one. But people automatically put a lid on themselves saying, this is the amount of money that I'm comfortable making. The amount of money that you're comfortable making is a selfish thought. Here's what I mean by that. So if you're a parent and you have a child and that child gets really sick, if you don't have the financial means to navigate that and take care of that and give them every single possibility of success through that crisis, like, wouldn't you rather have every financial means at your beck and call to take care of that situation? Or if you have a family member that was in need, that like maybe their car broke down and they needed help, wouldn't you love to have the financial ability to help them? So what we tend to do is we use the fear of the unknown to justify the comfort level that we are with our income. And we're really being selfish by not making enough for to be a giving human being in the moments when it's necessary.
Yeah, I think another way to put what you said to kind of package it is if you have the ability to make more money and you don't, push to do so, like who is that impacting and how? And just like you said, like, if someone calls and they're like, oh my God, my car broke down, like if, and you're like, gosh, what do you need to repair it? Like, oh, I got a flat tire. And they said, I got to replace all my tires. It's like $1,200. If you're sitting there, if you're in real estate and you're sitting there and you're like, damn, dude, I couldn't help them. I can't write that check. My question is like, do you want to never say that again? Like, that's what I want for you, and a simple question is this, Brent, is like, are you reaching your potential? And if not, then, are you willing to explore what it looks like to do so? And as a coach, yeah, of course, I'm not useful if you don't have something to push for, but it's not always money, right? Some people that get into coaching, like we are coaching them through how to run a big business and still have a life. They went all in and they worked too much.
Solved the money problem.
Correct.
And now they need to solve the other problem, which is balance.
Yeah. So if we say, how many homes are you selling this year? And they're like, oh, I'm gonna sell 50. And you're like, okay, is that, what do you want to sell? And they're like, I want to sell 50. And you're pacing 50. You want to sell 50. Awesome. Tell me about your work-life balance.
What life?
Yeah. That's what some people say. They're like, I have no life. Right.
Yeah. And by the way, the same methodology applies, right? Like what? So, like, person selling 50 homes. How many hours a week are you working? And they say 60. Okay, great. What if you had to sell 50 homes next year, but you could only work 30?
That's
Same
the time
rule
element
applies.
you were talking about earlier. That's the time
Right.
element, right?
Yeah. It's the same exact rule, same exact thought exercise. And what will happen in that situation with someone who's really selling a lot of business is you'll find all of the things that they've placed importance on that actually isn't moving the needle for them, that they, it could be stuff that they started when they were newer and they still do it. And it's like, and then you can trace it all back and be like, that's not producing revenue.
So let's give some examples here. Like where do you spend your time? You're like, so let me just chunk it down. So you work 60 and you sell 50 homes. That's awesome. What if you had to do it in 30 hours? First thing they're going to say is there's no way I could do that. It's the first thing they're going to say. And then that's as a coach or a leader or a mentor or someone who's in their life who's helping them to potentially reach further than they could on their own. You say, okay, that's cool. What if you had to? Like if you only could work 30 hours in this business, like what would you have to change to continue to sell 50 homes a year? And then that's when they're like, well, I couldn't show a home anymore, or I'd have to stop writing my newsletter, or whatever. And then that's when you're like, okay, so, tell me about the newsletter. Could someone else do that? Like Brent, when I hired my first admin, they took over my TC work, and laughingly, I honestly thought I was good at it. And the reason is because I understood the contracts. Like I got it. I understood them better than any TC, at least at the time that I thought, now of course there's TCs that know the contracts as good or better than I do for sure. But at the time I'm like, no, I know the contracts. Now in terms of like doing all the things and meeting all the timelines, I probably wasn't as good. And so the question is, this goes back to one of the myth understandings in the real Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, which is like it's number 5, by the way, but it's people only want to work with me. Only I can provide the level of service, that they're used to.
Totally.
What's the reality, Brent?
Well, the reality is that people want to work with the standard that you represent. And by the way, if you have a standard, like go back to your transaction coordination example, if you have a standard of professionalism and quality, there is a high likelihood of your salesperson that you can find an admin that is significantly better at the details than you are. And so you'll impart your standard and expectation onto that transaction coordinator on how you want it to look and feel. That is what people will flock to, not you, but the standard you represent.
Which I think that should be our next group coaching, actually, is the standards you represent. We can put that on site. If you're listening to this and you're wondering like what group coaching is, just so you know, you can check it out on our website, realestategrowth.network. We've got coaching up there. It's every single week, and there's actually a free 30-day trial. So if you want to check it out, go there. But I think the standards piece is really interesting, and we don't have to get into the weeds here, but I'll tease it here, which is what are your standards? So, for example, communication. Like, what's a standard with you? Someone calls and you can't answer. Like, how do you handle it? Do you text them back right away? Do you call them within a certain time? Does your voicemail say a certain thing? All those things.
By the way, if you're saying right now, well, I haven't thought about that, I don't have a standard around that, you do have a standard. It's just a really shitty one.
Yeah.
Like,
it likely is a bad one, or it's just simply something that you're like, oh, I actually do this. I just never documented it.
correct.
And now when you document it, it's like, okay, this is what I want to hand off to people.
This is what I expect of other people to do. Here's the things that I do that have made me good and made people want to work with me. Document that, and then that becomes a standard for anybody that represents you in the future.
Yeah. And for some reason right now, Brent, and my coaching clients, I have, I don't know, like more than a handful that are looking to make an executive assistant hire. That could be one of the first tasks they do. Have your executive assistant either follow you around or interview you or both, and figure out exactly what you've done to be successful. So
that's an interesting thought. So back to the limiting belief conversation. I know we probably got to jump into some other stuff, but I just want to like tie a bow on this. Like, people have limiting beliefs. First of all, what does limiting belief mean? And then like, what are ways that people can, besides goal and timeline, what are ways that people can discover their limiting beliefs and work through them?
yeah, so let me just profess that everyone on the planet has limiting beliefs. Every single person. So all of us are walking around with these stories and these beliefs that are like hard and fast truths to us, but they might not be 100% true. And some of them we're aware of, and some of them we're completely unaware of.
Like that agent, she wasn't aware that I want to show homes. Like I'm the only one that can show the home or whatever. That's a limiting belief. She wasn't aware of it.
Well, even before that, yes, that's true. And even before that, she had a belief that there's no way to sell more homes without working more hours. and it's
Got it.
limiting her ability to, reach her
Think
potential.
differently or reach your
Yeah,
potential.
and
Got
it's
it.
like,
Okay.
okay, like here's a simple exercise for that. It's like, okay, there's no way to sell more homes. Is that true? Yeah, it is. Okay,
Yeah.
is it 100% true? Is there anyone else
Well,
selling more homes than you are and working the same or less hours?
well, no, it's not 100% true.
There you go. There you go. So you start to flush that out, and then it's like, okay, well, if you had to sell more homes, but you were not allowed to work more hours, like what would you do? And of course, you can guide them through some exercises and ideas, but
So what I just heard, because I said, what is a limiting belief, but then also like, how do you flush after you flush them out? How do you deal with them? And uh, the story busting model questions, I think you just started to uncover that is it. So what are those questions? So someone can either ask themselves those questions or kind of use them to process through when they are having a limiting belief. What are those
yeah.
questions?
Yeah, there's like 4 or 5 and there's variations on them, but the simple one is, when someone's belief set, especially if like if you're the outsider and you can see like, dude, yeah, then it's like, okay, ask these questions. Is it true that you can't sell more homes without, working more hours?
And
They
you'll either
say,
get a yes or a no, depending on
yeah,
how ingrained that belief is.
yeah. Typically, they're going to say yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's no way to sell more homes without working more hours. And it's like, okay, is it 100% true? Like, there's no way. And 100%, what you're saying is like, it's very hard to have something be absolutely like 100% locked down true. And then if you already know the answer, you might even add like, is there someone else who's doing what you think might not be possible? Like, is anyone else achieving the results that you don't think are possible? And then typically you get them to put a crack or a fracture in their belief. It's like, oh, maybe, you're casting doubt, right? And then once we've got them thinking that it's possible to do something else, then it's like, okay, well, since we know it's not 100% true, like how is having that thought serving you today? And this is critical because most people will say, well, it's not serving me. The reality is it is serving you. Okay. It doesn't mean it's serving you in a good way, but it's absolutely serving you. It's serving you to justify why you're living this smaller life, or to, like you're like, okay, I sell 20 homes a year. That person sells 40. At least I have a life. You're justifying your number. It's serving you. You may or may not know if they have a life, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's designed, your thoughts are a lot of times designed to protect you. Like your
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
So how is it serving you? So pull those out, pull those answers out. Like it is serving you for sure. Then the last question is the one that really can open it up, is like, who would you be without this thought? Or who could you be without this thought? Like if you didn't have this thought and didn't have this belief, who could you become?
Wow. So is this something that someone can go through on their own if they have the questions? Is it better to have somebody else walk them through it, or what?
That's kind of a coaching question, really, Brent. And it's a good question. I would say, sure, you can go through it on your own, but the problem is we don't typically have awareness, right? Coaches, a way to describe coaching is typically, like pretend like you're the bottle. You're a water bottle or a Coke bottle or whatever. You don't even know, right? And I'll tell you why. You're on the inside of the bottle. So you can see outside, but you can't see what's on the label. And someone who's not even a coach, anyone in your life, they see what's on the label. They see things you can't. And that's the challenge of attempting to do this all by yourself, is that you probably have blind spots. So
if you do it on your own with the blind spots, you're not reading the label. It's
Yeah.
possible to help yourself, but way more impactful if you have someone else walking you through it, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. There's you can work on the things but there's definitely things you don't. So you're gonna run out of room, right?
In other words, this is why you see the most successful people with coaches. Like coaching isn't a thing that like, hey, I'm new and I need to learn how to sell real estate, or I'm new and I need help becoming a business person or an entrepreneur or whatever. Like people at all, Gary Keller is a billionaire. Gary Keller has a coach. he has someone that can read the outside of the label, because we all have an outside of the label.
100%.
Okay. Got it.
I think there's we'll save it for another time, but there's something, if you want to Google it, it's called the Johari window model. Johari, and basically there's 4 brackets. So it's like what you know. There's 2 columns that say that, and then there's what you don't know, and then there's what other people know, and then what no one knows. And so like the things that everyone knows about you, you know it, and other people know about it. That's typically your open self. And then you have your the things that other people know but you don't. Those are your blind spots. And then you have the things that you know but no one else knows, your secrets, if you will, right? And then of course the bottom right is you don't know it and others don't know it. This one would be what I would refer to as your potential. And that's what a coach can really, really dig into.
Yeah, Aaron, let's get that in the show notes for people watching this or that can come back to it. And then when the podcast releases on Spotify and Apple, we'll make sure it's in the show notes as well.
Sweet.
So,
okay, you want to jump over to some real estate news, Brent?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Okay, cool. So this first article is pretty interesting. It's here's the title: Why New Homes Are More Popular Than Existing Homes Recently. This is from Investopedia. Recently, new home sales surged, rising 20% month over month in August to an annual rate of about 800,000 units, the fastest pace since early 2022. Investopedia buyers are gravitating towards new construction because builder incentives are aggressive. Interest rate buydowns, paid closing costs, design credits, all offered by about 66% of builders. So 2/3 of builders are offering incentives. Inventory also favors new homes because there's about 7.4 months of supply versus 4.6 of existing homes. And then finally, new home sales are more affordable right now. Median price is $413,500 versus the existing home median price is $422,000. So these new homes not only are priced better in some cases, they're also offering massive incentives. So here's a question: if demand rises, so rates come down and maybe demand rises, do these incentives stick around, or will builders get rid of them as fast as they possibly can?
Well, look, I mean, yes, they're going to get rid of them. This is a demand creator, and they're winning the war against resale. That's what's happening. And it's no secret that people are extremely rate sensitive right now, and builders are leveraging their margin and their ability to pre-buy interest rates without impacting the concession rule. So let me break that down for any agent out here listening, how this works. Basically, builders can go out and make a deal with a lender, and they can pre-buy down an interest rate in bulk. And then when they give that incentive to someone, the concession rule does not apply because it was done before the transaction. The concession rule is different for conventional VA, FHA, on how much a builder can give the buyer in close. So like closing, paid down their rate. If they were to pay down their rate through closing, they're limited. It costs way more money to get a rate down to the, there's some that are advertising at 2.99%. And I know that's probably a 3-1 buy down. You probably end up at a 4.9% at the end of 3 years, but still 4.9. That's a really low rate. Plus they're buying down the first 2 years. So I think there's 2 things at play here. I think builders are business people, and they're willing to make tighter margins to move their inventory, to keep their people working and to keep things flowing and moving. And home sellers are not. They are emotionally tied to their property and to the amount of money that they said that they think they were going to make in comparison to 21. So there's just this challenge that people are running into. Now, the smart agent will explain that in detail to a consumer to compete not only with resale, but with new construction.
So just jumping in here real quick, you hit the nail on the head. Builders are using math and logic, and then resale existing. And unfortunately, agents get lumped in here. They're using emotion, right? Like agents will be like, gosh, well, they might, they bought it 3 years ago. And if we listed this, then they'll sell it for less than they bought it for. And it's like, okay, well, what's it worth? It doesn't matter. Like, you got to remove your emotion. That builder comes in and says, I built it at this price. The market's at this price. So let's get it sold, and they'll get aggressive on it until it sells. The homeowner sitting there is like, well, I don't want to lose money. And then the agent buys that story often. They just buy into that story and they're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Not recognizing, oh, by the way, when they sold their home in 2022 that they bought in 2012, they made 500 grand, right? Like,
Yeah.
like we have to recognize that, us getting emotional with our clients is not helping them. Here's a description I described, Brent, and then I want to ask you one more question on this, and then we'll move on. As agents, our clients want to jump in the mud and flop around and roll around. And as agents, we have a choice. We can jump right next to them and roll around with them, or we can throw them a hand and grab them and pull them out of the muck and get focused on their goal. So that's your job. Your job is not to, your job is to pull them out of the crap and help them see how they can reach their goal if they want to.
Well, by the way, like, agents shy away from that. They think that getting in the mud will cause them not to lose the client, versus pulling them out of the mud will cause them to maybe not get the deal. In other words, if they're honest with them, they don't get the deal. That just means you don't know what to say and how to say it. That's all that means. Like, yes, you're not going to win every single client. And if someone's unwilling to sell their home with what the market is yielding, you probably don't want that person anyways, right? And there's a high likelihood you don't know what to say or how to say it in order to get people on board with what actually needs to happen to get their home sold if they actually have a good enough reason to sell their home.
Love it. Yeah. Be the professional and help them reach their goal. So here's my question for you, Brent. And this is agents, listen up, because this is how you take advantage of this situation. So these builders are spending tons of money and marketing dollars to promote this stuff. How can agents use this to their advantage?
All right. Well, thinking through the lens of a marketer. Okay. So number one, what do we know about the consumer currently as it pertains to interest rates?
Very sensitive.
They're very sensitive to interest rates. Like, I've heard from multiple professional, analysts that say below 6 is where everything unlocks, right? That there's something about below 6 that is going to shift sentiment. I don't know what it is. I don't know if people are tired of waiting and they just want something to have a 5 in front of it. I don't know. But, and by the way, this goes for knowing your lender and their deals and what they can bring to the table, but taking specifically the builder incentive, because now you don't have to like talk about what terms or their qualification metrics or anything like that. The builder has disclosed that. You can then use it as a MOFR, which is make offer for immediate response. And you can send this MOFR out via email, via text, via call, and say, I was just alerted or just given information from a builder that we can get you as low as a insert rate. So a local builder here, 2.99%. Let me know if you're interested. And the fact of the matter is it doesn't matter if they're not interested in that builder or not, or if they are or aren't interested in that builder. The fact of the matter is it gets the hand raises of people that are interested in doing something, but in their mind, interest rates have prevented them. Now when someone reaches out, you get to go into problem solving mode of not what rate do you need, but what's causing you to want to move? By when do you want that done? And what if there was a way to financially make it work? Let's break it down.
I love it. I think it's something that, essentially you can apply this to anything, but if there's something happening in your area that's of benefit to your buyers, sellers, or even just sphere, share it with them, right? Just share it with them. You think a lot of times we're living right here, Brent. We're just like, oh, this is what I see. Everyone sees what I see. They don't. People don't know where rates are at, right? The normal average person doesn't have a freaking clue. And they definitely don't know what kind of builder incentives are going on. And I guarantee you builder incentives have been going on in your area for probably 2-3 years. And you can, piggyback on this via social media and then all the avenues Brent mentioned and share it. Share it once a month, share it every couple months. Like, they're spending the money. You can ride the wave and get some hand raises. So,
But by the way, here's how you know here's how you can be sure that it's fairly insulated information is who do builders traditionally market to?
realtors, agents.
They market to agents. Like they don't have like some of them market direct to consumer, but not very many. And even when they do market direct to consumer, they're not like they don't have a database of direct consumer people like real estate agents do.
Well, yeah, they're
So
just marketing themselves too. So a lot of people don't even, they unsubscribe and all that stuff. So
yeah, but who doesn't? Agents don't unsubscribe. Think about it this way: you can either go and fish with a fishing pole, or you can fish with a fishing net. When you market to agents, you're fishing with a fishing net because you're marketing to them and then their databases. But it requires the agent to be smart and take that information and disseminate it out.
love it. All right, let's move on. There's another big piece of news since the last time we had our pod, which is Compass acquired Anywhere. So Compass is acquiring Anywhere Real Estate in an all-stock deal valued so the combined firm will dominate national brokerage scale. This is from Barron's, by the way. The move isn't just about volume. Analysts see it as a way to fold in vertical services like title, escrow, and relocation, creating more control over the transaction stack. Post-deal, the merge entity is expected to command 13 to 15% of the U.S. existing home transaction sides. So, this is interesting. When a brokerage controls more of the service stack, title, escrow, financial links, how does that change the leverage agents have or lose? What do you think, Brent? I've got thoughts too.
Well, first of all, having a stack of title, escrow, financing, all of that. I think the code that's been being tried, like that Zillow has tried to crack, that Redfin tried to crack, that now Compass is trying to crack, is consumer experience, an ecosystem, if you will. I've yet to see that work at scale, but I don't think that's why they're doing it. To be honest, like yes, they're doing it. It's going to improve their valuation. It is income and revenue generating verticals, but there's something, and whether or not I know exactly why this is happening, I have my opinions, but I don't know if it's true. But what's interesting is Compass has been fighting over the last couple of months, maybe 6 months, about this cooperative listing thing, meaning they want the ability to not have to follow the rules of the MLS, any given MLS. In other words, they want to be able to privately market homes for a duration of time before they put it in the multiple listing service, if they ever put it into the multiple listing service. And there are MLS rules, and there's the the clear cooperation stuff that's there's battles going on there about, like, is that something they're allowed to do? Like, they're withholding listings from other real estate agents, as by definition, but they're pitching it to their consumer as, hey, you get more of an exclusive audience, which causes like urgency to offer or buy prior to it going to the full market. So there's some kind, I don't know what the play is there, but I think that's what's going on here. They wanted more territory because there's some kind of anti-MLS play. I don't know what it is. And again, that's my opinion. I don't know if it's true or not, but it seems like there's something that's down that vein because they've been fighting that fight for quite a while.
This is interesting to me on that topic. I'll just piggyback on what you're talking about, which is, is it in the seller's best interest to potentially not go on the MLS? And I've heard the greatest of the greats say, like, absolutely not. Everyone should be on the MLS. I'll argue, like, no, not everyone should be. In fact, when I'm dealing with land and development stuff, if I call a builder and I'm like, hey, I've got this land for sale, you want to check it out? And I tell them it's on the MLS, they immediately are not interested because they think if it's on the MLS, it must not be a good deal. Otherwise, someone else would have bought it.
Yep.
So I can't even sell land to those people, right? I that's on the MLS. So all my sellers who are wanting to go private, like, you can't put it on the MLS. There's no way, so. And now, is that the way it works sometimes for some of these, larger, more exclusive, listings? Maybe. But yeah, this is a big, interesting play. I mean, I think they're kind of setting the table up to be able to make a move there. So we'll have to keep an eye on it.
What's your suspicion as to why they think that's so important, or what leverage do you think they're trying to get by being a larger brokerage and having that as a mechanism? Do they think that consumers will now flock to them because they have this large exclusive network, or is there another motive here?
I mean, I think there's like 3 or 4 things at play here. So just think about this. Most of you guys have some sort of new construction in your town, and there are bad actors out there. So let me give you an example, Brent, where an agent has a whole community, and there's homes being built, but they're not on the market yet, and those homes never make it to the market, and then all of a sudden they're sold. But if you go out there, if you're an agent representing a buyer, and you go out there and say, "Hey, tell me about the price of that home," they're like, "Oh, we haven't released prices yet." And then you come back next week and you're like, "Hey, did you release prices on that yet?" And they're like, "No, it's sold." And so that bad actor, what are they doing? They're trying to sell it to their own clients so they can double.
They're
end it, make more
eliminating
commission.
any person represented by an agent
Correct.
and waiting for the call to come in from someone who isn't represented by an agent, and then they will disclose price.
Yeah, they're telling price to all these people the whole time, except for the people. Now, this is what's fascinating, and builders need to wake the fuck up. Their agents, okay, are sitting there representing them, and they're like, "My agent's so good, they're the only one that sells my product." Little do they know that their agent is actually ostracizing the real estate community. And now the real estate community is mad at the agent and the builder. The builder has no clue. Builder doesn't have a clue. And so what's happening is that home probably could sell for the same amount of money or even more money if they would put it on the market. So I think these bad actors are there. So why would Compass do this? Well, if you have an exclusive list and you can only see that list if you go to Compass, like that's a dangerous game. If you have all of these different large brokerages, let's say, Compass and whatever, EXP and Keller Williams or whatever, if all these start going in-house only, now you're in like the commercial real estate game where it's like, we're pretty much using Zillow as the MLS. So how fun does that sound?
Not fun. Not good.
So it's something we you want to pay attention to for sure. I'm sure we got to move on, but this is something we got to watch. So do you want to go into more news, or do you got anything else to round us out here?
Well, what do you got? Let's hit one. I think we got 4 minutes.
Okay.
Let's end on a good headline.
So I don't know if it's good, but this is Austin's housing market tilts towards buyers. So it's good if you're a buyer in Austin. So Austin's housing market is showing one of the most dramatic shifts towards buyers nationwide. In August, there were 131% more sellers than buyers, giving buyers serious leverage. This is in the Statesman in Texas. Prices across much of the metro have softened. Redfin estimates 3.7% year-over-year declines. Mortgage rates have eased to 6.25%, which may encourage renewed activity if they dip further. Inventory and pending sales are creeping upward, pointing to a more balanced or even buyer-favored environment if this trend continues. Now, you and I went and coached in Austin. What was that, in May?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like everyone's puppy had just been punched in the face. It was pretty depressing.
Yeah. The first of all, I don't know what is causing their market. I don't know the micro market data well enough as to like what's causing their market to have a sharper knee-jerk reaction to the interest rates and people moving, people coming in, people coming out. I don't know why. But what I will say is, this is a lead measure to other metro markets, like what you'll probably see in other metro markets if interest rates don't ease. But I don't necessarily think that it's a bad thing. Now, I think Austin agents might say that it's a bad thing just because of the experience they've had to go through. But even the article says it, and I tend to agree. Like it's moving or pointing to a more balanced or buyer-favored market. At some point, markets have to shift or change to adapt, and they can't just rise and rise and rise and rise. And the fact of the matter is, across the nation, home prices are it's less than people would think, are above the inflation line. So the core inflation line that they track goes up 4% every single year. It's a nice, perfect diagonal line. And, from 2000 call it 10, 9, 10. It sat below until in some markets, Boise, I think it jumped above that in 2017, but some markets it jumped above it in 2020. So it was below the inflation line for a lot of markets. Now it's above. So something has to change or happen, which I think has been happening. I think you're seeing it across the nation for that to catch back up with the inflation line.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just normal. It's normal. It's natural.
So here's a question, and I think both you and I could jump in on this. What kind of pricing strategies should agents in high growth metros adopt now that leverage is shifting to buyers? Like, what do you do?
Well, I'll tee it up for you, and then you can finish us off. But there's a difference between looking at sold inventory and then looking at the competition and absorption rate. So walk me through that.
Yeah, thank you. So, traditional market, if it's, seller's market or even balanced market. Seller's market, I mean, here's a simple method. It's like comp it out, meaning like what sold in the last 90 days, and then add 5%, right? It's going up. Now, if it's a balanced market, you probably want to comp it out, and you might look at actives as well and just kind of see where you're fitting. If
5 active, 5 pending, 5 sold kind of thing.
There you go. Yeah, and just figure out where you're at. And then when you get into a buyer's market, the sold comps can almost be irrelevant. And what I mean by that is if you are, if you're selling something super unique, then it's completely different. But if you're selling something that has a lot of competition, the active comps, they're what matter. So figure out like how many homes are active, how many are selling every week, what percentage are going to move in the next 30 days, and where do you fit in that bracket? Like if you got 100 homes on the market and 10 sell per week, you've got 10 weeks of supply. And then you, of course, need to understand how many are coming on the market every week, because you might just have this infinite number of supply technically. So what do you got to do to be in the top 10%? Because if you're not in the top 10% of those listings, then you're probably not going to sell. And so that's from a pricing strategy. I want my clients to know that, hey, now we're competing for buyers. Buyers used to be competing for us. It's the other way around. Now we're competing for buyers.
That is such a good way to phrase it. Like, hey, buyers were competing for us 3 years ago. Now we're competing with buyers. If we're competing with buyers, what do you think we have to do?
Got to win. Yeah.
Mind blown.
Then we can end on that.
We do. We should. And by the way, if you're an agent listening to this and all you took was that will make you significantly more money this year if you transition to looking at active inventory, figuring out how many of those comps are selling in the 30-day period. If it's 30% of the active inventory in your in that comp range, then you need to be priced in the 30 percentile or better. I mean, I would probably be in the 15th percentile. So take that, run with it, and go sell more houses.
Cool. Hey, thank you, guys. Appreciate you, Brent.
All right. Take care.